Say what? Yeah! Got it. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Say What? You can do it too.
Say what?
The confusion is real. I am Sydney, also known as Sis.
I am Lauren, also known as Assassin.
And you're probably like, why do you keep saying that? And it's because there's gonna be videos on this channel where you just hear her voice, but this is her face.
Hi.
That's her face.
This is my face.
And this is our pod talk show cast thing where we're two best friends just sitting down telling each other things about weird stuff and spooky stuff and conspiracy stuff and mystery stuff. And that's basically all this is. So if you missed the first episode, what we did was we kind of sat down and discussed a little bit about our beliefs in terms of the mysterious, the supernatural, so on and so forth. So if you missed that and want sort of a level set of what's happening, you can go back to the last episode that was posted because we got into that. And this is the first episode where Lauren is going to tell me something.
Yes.
I don't know anything about this topic. We are trying to surprise each other with new information, which is very hard because I am
on it with this stuff
all the time. That is my daily content. So I got my water.
I has mine.
I got my blanket. I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to be spooked.
You ready to be spooked?
What is, for everybody watching, what is the subject matter we're talking about today?
So today we are talking about a haunted place in Liverpool in the UK.
Okay.
It's Newshampark Hospital, but prior to it being Newshampark Hospital, it was many other things. And
Newshampark.
Newshampark, Newsham, so Newsham.
Ah!
Newsham.
Newsham.
Newsham. So do you know anything about the history of Liverpool or anything remotely to do with the docks or the background of the
No, I don't think so.
No. So before we get on to the hospital, I want to tell you a bit about the background of Liverpool, because the hospital, before it became a hospital, it was basically a orphanage for kids who have lost their fathers to sea life. So the dads were seamen on the docks, and they went and did the whole...
And this is confirmed.
Yes.
This is real.
Yeah.
Okay, because the thing I want to say going into these stories is I'm a big ghost story person and a spooky person, but there is a lot of ghost tours, a lot of stuff that people label as historical, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's folklore or a legend. A lot of the times you go into those places and it's not real. They're just have a story that's been passed down for generations. So that's the reason I ask, I didn't think she would come in with something that wasn't real, but just so you know, I am very much a proponent of this is factual, documented information that we're going off of.
Absolutely, 100%. So Liverpool, in the 19th century, it became classed as a major global port, and it kind of basically was globally the highest ranking port that had in the trade industry. So it was trading, and everything kind of went through the Liverpool ports. And it was a slow growth to begin with, because Liverpool is a very, very small town back then, and that was in the 1800s. So because there was that little people that lived in that town, it took about 400 years for the whole trade to go through Liverpool, for the docks and everything like that. But then when it did become such a high, the first commercial dock was built in 1815.
Okay.
So when that happened, you had all the seamen, that it kind of opened up a load of careers for males to go and work at sea and work in this trade industry. But then a lot of men were dying at sea, and there was basically a group of people, a group of rich white men that were what are we going to do for the wives and for the kids of the men that are being lost at sea? So they created a orphanage. Now, it's probably due to the time that it was in the 18th century, 1815 kind of time.
Yeah.
But what irked me about it was, even if the mothers were still alive, the kids were still getting sent to the orphanage, because they didn't think that the mothers could take care of the children without the male there.
Oh
so
my
there was that whole misogyny around it as well.
Get out!
Yeah, seriously. So these people were dying at sea, and the kids were being sent to the orphanage. And they weren't being called orphans either, they were being called inmates.
Shut up!
So you have a bunch of kids that aren't parentless, they're just fatherless. You've got a bunch of wives that are now widows, have had their kids taken off them, been sent to an orphanage. So before it was the hospital, it was an orphanage for the kids that had dads die at sea, basically.
That's some dumb shit, y'all.
It was an orphanage and an educational institution, with the port trade booming for Liverpool for many, many different reasons. You know, also massive in slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the biggest ports for going through slave trade and stuff like that. Dangerous job, all these people dying, and then prior to 1969 there was no orphanage, there was nothing there kind of like looking after kids or anything like that. So a bunch of boat owners all contributed about £500, and then they created this orphanage. The orphanage was erected by Liverpool Seamen's Orphan Institution. There was like a temporary home in 1869, and by the end of the first year in 1869, so it was August, September, October, November, December, so in 4 months it had 46 boys and 14 girls in residence, called inmates. Not orphans or children, they were inmates.
Y'all, okay.
Which was like, why? Why are you calling these kids
I'm
inmates?
still so twisted that they took kids away from their moms.
Yeah.
That is insane to me, considering like how many men died. That's so dumb.
Yeah.
That's so dumb. Okay.
So, then they kind of like, it was like just a temporary building to begin with, because they didn't know how successful it was going to be or that kind of stuff. So they ended up holding a ceremony in 1871, but they called it a report, even though there was like a massive gathering of an audience. The mayor did some speaking, and the kids from the orphanage sang some church hymns, you know. They pushed religion onto these kids so much when they were in the orphanage. They pushed a religious education. The mayor gave a speech, and they sang hymns. And I just think, you know, all these orphans, inmates singing church hymns is just creepy.
Yeah.
In itself. You know, it's just, you know. So the whole thing, you know, let's build an orphanage to support widows and parentless children, brilliant, but why do we need to call them inmates, right?
Right.
Making them foster a religious education system, sing hymns at an event while some rich white men talk about how it's sad to think that 200 to 400 children are sleeping on the streets due to miscommunication. So there was a whole issue with the building actually being built. So there was a miscommunication between the people that wanted to build a more permanent structure and the actual workers. So it took years for that building to actually get built, and the mayor was like talking about how between 200 and 400 kids were sleeping on the street, and they needed to solve that problem.
Right.
I mean, just put them with the mothers.
Yeah. At home with their parents that are living.
So obviously, I mean, we've just been watching Matilda the other day, and between 1700s and 1900s, we in the UK, in Britain, we weren't well known for treating our kids good or well. So you can imagine that this orphanage was like just brutal to these children, and there's been stories and reports of like people that have left the orphanage have kind of accounted their experiences in the orphanage.
Yeah.
And it's like stuff like one of the children stated that they weren't really picky with the punishments. It was just all really cruel. They would eat soup every day, and on Wednesdays they would serve something called slink, which was basically the entire week's leftovers. And this person that was kind of like making an account of her time, it gets worse, her time in this orphanage is, so she refused to eat this slink, the leftovers on the Wednesday, and she would secretly pour it down the drain. But one of the Wednesdays she got caught. So they literally made her fish it out of the sewage and force-fed it to her there and then. Like, that shit's fucked.
That's so
gross.
wrong.
So, yeah, they also segregated the boys and the girls, so even if you had like siblings that were at the same orphanage, you wouldn't see them, and apart from Saturdays where they integrated with each other. There was a punishment cupboard, so they'd shove a kid in a punishment cupboard.
Chokey, got it?
Yeah, pretty much. And it was on I think it was the naughty boy corridor. So there's a naughty boy corridor and a punishment cupboard, and they kind of like, naturally, you know, it's not going to be a ghost story if someone doesn't die.
Yeah.
But one of the boys that got put in the punishment cupboard was left there for hours and hours and hours, and he was screaming and screaming and screaming, and then all of a sudden the screams stopped, and all the nurses and the matrons of the orphanage just assumed that he'd screamed himself to exhaustion and fallen asleep or passed out or whatever, and then they came to him the day after and he was dead.
Yeah.
In the punishment cupboard.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, that was all incredibly messed up orphanage, you know, kids died from cruel treatment and stuff, but that's not even the worst bit about this site. So, after the orphanage survived the First World War, some of the kids died during the First World War, and then in the Second World War, they all got shipped out to the countryside so that they were gonna, you know, survive. And the orphanage kind of closed down after that, because at that point social services were a lot better, and they were like, why are we taking these kids away from the mothers?
Yeah.
You know, let's give them back to the mothers. Just because the dad's not in the life doesn't mean. So after the Second World War, they were like, we're done with the orphanage, we don't need it anymore, the mothers can look after their kids.
Shocker! Whoa! I know.
But this all happened over the course of like 400 years. Like, this orphanage was 1700 to about 1949. So it's about 200 years of cruel treatment to kids. Kids just like randomly dying from like being in the punishment cupboard. So after that, it then became Newshampark Hospital.
Of course it did.
Yeah. So it stayed open as Newshampark Hospital for 38 years. It had its own psychological ward for the mentally insane. And that kind of what the hospital became known for. It was like the psychologically disturbed patients.
Yeah.
And those patients would make claims of being able to see and hear children, and it could be, you know, part of their psychological condition, but then you also had some of the nurses that would say they could see apparitions of little kids walking through the corridors, and they could hear the screams of the boy that died in the punishment cupboard.
Sorry, can I interrupt you for a second? Fuck that.
Fuck that.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
Please continue. Yep.
So it stayed open for 38 years as that hospital. It developed its own psychiatric unit, and then a local asylum was forced to close, and all of those patients got moved to Newshampark Hospital.
No!
Again, they weren't known as patients, they were known as inmates.
Fuck that!
So you've, in one site, you've tied kids, children, innocent children that have like, you know, been through shitty ordeal with losing a dad or both parents or whatever. They've been called inmates, and then you've got patients of psychiatric unit,
so angry.
also called inmates.
So angry.
I'm like, what's that about? It's kind of barbaric. Anyway, the patients of the hospital and the asylum again claimed to hear and see the children that weren't actually there. A nurse was found dead on the staircase by a main corridor, with reports saying that she often spoke of seeing ghosts and spirits in the hospital. It was really difficult to find the original report to find out how she died. I couldn't find that anywhere.
She was pooped.
She was
She was pooped by a ghost, and that's how she died. I'm not gonna correct myself. That's staying.
Yep. So other reports have said that nurses and inmates have claimed to hear dragging noises, screams, seeing apparitions of people and children. Someone who worked at the hospital claimed to feel a presence of pure evil when they went to certain parts of the hospital, and most of the nursing staff said that they felt the same. They were genuinely terrified to go into certain areas within the building, and when this ex-hospital worker was made redundant, he couldn't walk out of there fast enough, he couldn't leave quick enough. Others have said that they felt like breaths on the back of the necks and have had their hair pulled when no one has physically been there to pull it.
Yep.
It's recorded somewhere. I've not been able to... I found this piece of information, but I can't find the source of it, so whether it's true or whether it's just a exaggeration.
Right.
But it's recorded somewhere that a sum of 16,000 children in total died on the site of Newshampark Hospital, whether it was an orphanage or as a hospital.
For how long that it was around,
yeah,
I feel that's probably fine.
And they were cremated on the site. So it's unclear what the building was when it happened, or whether it's just a grand total of all.
So there's not bodies.
Yeah.
They were burning bodies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, there's always the skeptic in me that wants to explain everything away. But if something's going to be haunted, it's going to be this place.
Yeah.
There's reports of, I can't find where I've written it down, but there's basically reports of, I think 3 people died a shady death and was found underneath the frozen pond on the site of the hospital. So one of them was found with basically the neck slit. But they were found under the frozen pond, and they were found with the razor in their pocket. So suicide.
That's
extreme.
extreme.
Spirit, whatever, you know. If it was suicide, why have they been found at the
Bottom of a lake.
Underneath a frozen lake, pond, whatever it is. So there's a whole bunch of shady deaths. I think there was about 4 in total of shady deaths around the lake. And then you've got the kid that died in the closet, and then you've got the nurse that died in the corridor. And these, like the nurse and a patron, one of basically the trunchbull of the orphanage, and several kids are able to be heard throughout, like, the hospital, throughout the grounds at the site of Newshampark Hospital, and then it got shut down in 1992. Someone so really quiet not that long ago.
Oh my god!
So it got closed down in 1992. Somebody bought it, and then they wanted to develop it into hotels.
No, they didn't.
And but they got the application that they made to the government, because it's a listed building, so it can't be demolished. It's
like historical?
Yeah, it's a historically listed building, so it's category listed 2, so it cannot be demolished. Like, I don't know how you work around demolishing listed buildings, but they can't. And I'm thinking, with all the history, just get rid of it. Just get rid of all of it.
I don't think it matters. I think if they even wanted to turn it into a hotel, even if they demolish it, I still think it's going to be messed up, so it doesn't matter.
Absolutely, for sure. But they got rejected, and it didn't get to, like, and now it's just...
that's the dumbest thing ever.
A deserted...
I hate that.
empty hospital with so much death and history and.
Is this a place that actively does ghost tours and stuff?
It does. It actively does ghost tours. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that checks out. That seems like a selling point.
Yeah.
Fine.
So the period of time between it closing down as an orphanage and opening up as a hospital was around 5 years.
Okay.
And in those 5 years was when all the reports came out about the deaths at the orphanage.
Okay, so they didn't even know stuff.
No.
Okay.
So in 1878, someone was found under the ice in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
2 years after that, so in 1880, another guy was found in the lake, and this was the one who had his throat slit with the razor, but the razor was found in his pocket. 11 years after that, so that in 1891, math.
I zoned out when she started saying, however many years later.
11 years after that, another guy was found dead in the lake. So some shady shit was happening.
The lake. The lake is a place. I bet you an orphan got murdered there and was drowned there. And that's
probably.
why. Yep.
Yeah, probably.
Guarantee it.
It's just a really, it's now an abandoned hospital. It's just totally derelict, and it is used as ghost hunts. And it's really quite expensive to go and do some ghost hunts.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here right now is, we should have thought of this sooner, but, we're, learning the things. I'll put up some pictures here of sort of the exterior of the building, because I'm not going to do that much work, But these are those. Wow. Creepy. Oh no. Scary. Haunted. I'm sorry, but you are, this is a classic example of play stupid games, win stupid prizes. All just awful.
Yeah.
Just awful. 1,000%. And then on top of that, you're adding mentally ill people into that situation, which is just going to amplify it and make it so much worse, because I guarantee you those mental patients were not taken care of either.
No, probably not.
So,
Not when they're being referred to as inmates.
Yeah.
Oh, in 1897, a domestic servant was also found dead in the lake.
What's happening at the lake, y'all? What's happening at the little lake at the hospital orphanage abandoned building? What's
going on? I couldn't find anything about the lake or any kind of history around
some
the lake.
Some shit happened at the lake.
Yeah, apart from all these people have been found in the lake when it was frozen.
That's weird.
None of them have been found in a defrosted, flowy, watery
lake.
They've all been found at the bottom of a frozen lake.
So they were all found after lake was thawing out,
yeah.
It sounds like. Okay, so bodies weren't, it's not like it was springtime and they were just bobbing in water. It was, I am so curious about how, were these people that were found, were they patients? Were they
So a couple of them were. One of them was like a janitor type.
Mm-hmm.
Worked at the orphanage, just cleaning, being your general.
Yeah.
Janitorial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was a domestic servant, so that would have been pretty much similar, cooking, whatever. I think one of them was a nurse, so some of them are happening when it's an orphanage and some of them are happening when it's a hospital. So some real shady shit is happening down by that lake.
Interesting. Okay, for some reason I understood that as after the orphanage phase of its life ended, that's when dead bodies started appearing in the pond or the lake or whatever it is, but it's scattered throughout the whole time of its existence.
Yeah.
Interesting. Here's lessons learned. Why did we take away children from their mothers? That's a great question. never, literally, in that scenario, would have never expected that to be a thing. That's like the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Really and truly.
And it literally took from when 1871 to 1949.
That's absurd.
For them to be like, oh wait, mothers can actually take care of their children, let's give them back.
Yeah, like that's insane to me. And obviously just like, what were we doing? Like, don't get me wrong, there's some really messed up hospitals or like stories like that here in America too. Like there's some really, 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 really messed up places that I'm sure at some point we could talk about, but yeah, that alone for me was just like, bro, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're just wasting, like, I feel like they went out of their way to waste time and money and resources that, like, they didn't need to, like, waste energy on.
Yeah.
All this could have been avoided if you let children stay with their mothers.
Yep.
I understand if like, if the mother is gone too, that's a completely different situation.
Yeah, some of them were parentless, but the majority of them,
yeah,
it was all around.
It just, that's
to see men
so
dying
weird.
at sea.
And then basically paying to torture children, like so weird. Obviously really messed up. Clearly. But in terms of like the hauntings and the deaths and stuff, I'm very curious to know what was happening there prior to the orphanage being built, if there was already weird shit happening. Like, on the land, or whatever the reason for dead bodies to just be kind of like, unless somebody at the orphanage was just like, murdering people, like, casually.
Yeah.
Because obviously a kid's not gonna, like, think to, like... Anyway, what I'm trying to say is something was happening regardless.
Yeah, and the thing is, so the temporary building was like, it was on Duke Street or something like that, and then that closed down and they made the proper building that could house more orphans, and that was in Newshampark. None of the shady shit happened at the temporary building. All of it kind of happened at the site of Newshampark. So it was a hospital built inside a park. So, and an orphanage built inside a park.
There's killers in Newshampark. Did you like that?
Yeah.
Newsham. Thank you for that. I hated all of it.
Yep.
I think that 1,000% the people that went into that as a mental hospital, mental institute, definitely left way worse than they already were.
For sure.
Because I 1,000% believe that people were for sure hearing shit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, for them to come in and, like, to have that many group of... For sure... The people that were labeled crazy knew some shit was happening, for sure.
You know, you can always explain that part away of like, what if it is a part of their psychological illness, but not when you pair it with the nurses that are also experiencing the same creepy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1,000%. I think, you know, this kind of goes into the term with like, demons and all that kind of stuff in those places where such serious, like, horrible treatment was happening to living humans. I don't see how, like, people could not be impacted.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think, like, I don't know, obviously we'll never know, you know, how people ended up murdered under frozen light. Like, we will never know that. Nobody will ever be able to answer that question. Whether or not it was supernatural or not, but that's really weird.
Yeah, too many instances of the same thing. Maybe
over
if it was like,
such a span is, I mean, obviously it could always be like a serial killer, but like that's a very interesting thought that there's no explanation. Obviously, like, kids died because they were fucking cruel to children everywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
It doesn't matter. All the places here in America, like, all the places everywhere, it does not matter if you hear about an orphanage at a certain time period or, like, school, like, some, you know, they weren't even listed as orphanages, but, like, you just, like, do the basic research, you know, and they were not treated well.
When my dad was in school, they used to, like, it was the cane and the slipper and, you know, chalkboard,
spanking, belts, like, people don't do that anymore. If they do, they get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Like, there was, I don't know, I don't want to speak to it but there was, like, a super big trial here. I would have to look it up. I watched a documentary about it where a boy was, like, tortured and put in a cabinet and died. Yeah. And his parents obviously got arrested now. And, like, back then, that shit was normal.
Yeah.
They did that. And obviously now it's completely different, as it should be, because they're people.
Little people.
That are not psychologically developed yet. So, yeah, 1,000%. There was a lot of not great things happening, and then they were adding more not great things, and it just was like, yeah, no, and the fact that they kept it running until a year before I was born.
As a mental asylum.
That's insane.
Yep.
That's so stupid. People are stupid. Who makes these decisions?
But it's not long since, like, things like lobotomizing people and stuff has become illegal and frowned upon, and electroshock therapy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's sad. That's messed up. I'm not happy. I'm smiling, but I'm not happy. I'm smiling for you, basically. But unfortunately, there's a lot of stories like this, which is really, really sad. But it's just kind of like...
Yeah, it's just the Seaman Orphanage Institution is literally just white men that owned boats, and if you owned a boat in the UK at that period of time in Liverpool where there's docks and you're kind of like in the booming trade industry, you're a part of the slave trade. So I have no empathy for you, I have no sympathy for you. You're a rich white man, part of the slave trade, and you've thrown money at an orphanage where kids are being taken from their mothers to be beaten.
And let's talk about that for a real quick second. I can't imagine having a husband, having a kid, pushing that kid out of my vagine, and then having that husband die and someone tell me that I can't take care of the human I literally created. That's insane.
Especially when newborns rely on their mothers more than their fathers.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Absolutely crazy. It's a shame and really, really messed up. So that...
Don't worry about the mothers though, because they did outreach for the widows, to support the widows. They went out to the widows' homes to...
She's making it worse. She's making it even worse. Well, that was depressing and educational. As per usual, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
You know, let us know if you have any other, like, little snippets you're interested in hearing about in terms of, like, things you've heard about. Obviously, we don't know everything.
No.
We don't know all the places. I had such a hard time trying to pick something to, like, talk to you about because there's so much everywhere.
Yes.
All the time. So definitely let us know in the comments below if you think of something that you think we would enjoy or one of us would enjoy or whatever. We'd love to hear about that because we love hearing all the
Or even
weird...
if you just want to creep us out.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not... Ignore her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's crazy. She's seeing children everywhere. Literally. Alright, well thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I hope you learned something new. I did. I hated every minute of it. So thank you, Lauren. And we will see you guys on the next episode of Say What? Bye everybody.